Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and we're continuing with the series of the WOAMTEC discussions, Women on a Mission to Earn Commission. And this evening we're going to talk about real estate, and to help us understand it a little better, especially for the state of Massachusetts, we have a real estate agent, Nancy Theodore.
Hi, George.
Nancy, welcome.
Thank you.
So, real estate law, I guess. Well, you're a lawyer, so
Correct.
You have a wide range. As far as real estate goes, how broad a practice do you have?
Well, we handle everything regarding real estate transactions. So we represent buyers, we represent sellers, we represent people that are looking to convert homes into condos. So we do condo conversions as well. We also do commercial real estate. We have two offices in Lynn and Linfield. So we really cover the entire North Shore.
Well, when you say we, you're talking about the firm.
Correct.
Cherry
Tree Title. Correct. Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a group of attorneys working in the office on various matters regarding real estate. So we meet everyone's real estate needs.
So I guess the thing that has me a little bit surprised, I haven't bought a house in quite some time. One of the things was back then, when you buy a house, it has to be no more than 1 year's salary. And you look at the housing market today, and you can't do that anymore. No. Not even close.
Not even.
And the other one was, first time I bought a house, got an attorney, and he sat there and listened to the whole closing and went home and wrote up a bill for me. Nothing. Second time, I depended on the bank's attorney to look at the paperwork and said, since they were going to give me a mortgage,
right.
They wanted to be sure that whatever piece of property I got was something they could seize later on if something went wrong.
Correct.
So that's how it worked out. So in this day and age, how does it work out? Do you get picked up, called by the bank, by the attorney?
So the client usually calls me and says, I want to sell my house, or we've put in an offer on a house and we're looking to buy, and we'd like for you to help us to review the purchase and sale agreement that seller and buyer are going to negotiate. Yeah. So that's where I come in. So we make sure that the document is in place, that you are actually buying the property, whatever comes with it, whatever you and the buyer and the seller have determined is going to be included in the sale of the property. And then my office, we then do a title exam on the property to make sure that there's clear and marketable title, and that once we get to the closing table, you're going to be purchasing a property that you could sell free and clear, and that you are the rightful owner of, and nobody else is on title.
Yeah. So what can go wrong with the problem? What kind of things are you looking for in the search?
Oh, lots of things. Unrecorded discharges on the property.
Say again, please.
Unrecorded discharges. So let's say the previous owner, who's long gone, still has a mortgage on the property from, say, Citizens Bank.
Yeah.
We have to track that down. And so if it comes up on the title exam, then we need to rectify and find out let's get it discharged. Let's clear it off of the books, in essence. You want to clear it off of the title.
Somebody's got to pay off the mortgage.
Right. It's probably paid off, but they didn't discharge it.
Didn't.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a zero balance, but it's still on your title because it hasn't been discharged yet.
Oh, okay.
Other things, equity line of credit that are still open on the property. So just because you have a zero balance on a credit card, if you don't close it out, it's still able to be used. Mm-hmm. And so we've had issues where that has been on there, and that's a cloud on title. So we clear that up for you.
Well, you see a lot of times now advertisements of people who are retired and want some extra money, so they get a reverse mortgage.
Right. Yes.
How does that work?
So reverse mortgages, it provides a stream of income for the homeowner while they're still living in their house. So basically, it's like a line of credit,
Yeah.
And you're borrowing against it. And then whenever you decide to sell, that loan will get paid off, and it gives you a little extra money so that you can use it while you're still living in the house.
Okay, if you get into one of those kinds of deals, who owns the property? Do you still own it?
You still do own it, right? But then you've got this.
You got a lien on it?
Correct, exactly, that needs to be paid when you decide to sell.
So when you sell the house, some portion of that sales price goes to
Pay that off, correct.
pay off that loan.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's really kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean, reverse mortgages are becoming a little popular right now, but I don't particularly recommend them because I think that it's still a little slippery slope, and I don't think people understand about it. And the people that are selling it make it sound very attractive.
Oh, yeah.
But I just think that do your research before you do a reverse mortgage.
Well, what kind of problems can you run into with a reverse mortgage? What things do you have to guard against?
Well, because you're taking out another equity line, or if you're taking out another loan on the property, so the ability to pay back that loan, some people may or may not be able to, or some people might not understand the terms, some people might not understand the costs that are really associated with reverse mortgages. So there's a lot that comes with it, but I do think that people just need to make sure that they understand it fully before entering into it.
Well, suppose I want to get a reverse mortgage in my house. Would I go to somebody like you and say, hey, this is what they're proposing? Does this make sense, or what am I going to get myself into?
I could help you do that, or usually it's a company that does reverse mortgages, and they'll probably have a slew of people that are working for them. But yes, I would definitely consult an attorney before you enter into any agreement.
Because the point you were making early on, that they have a very good sales pitch.
They do.
That's very positive.
Right.
And that's where you run into, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you, or buried in the fine print.
Exactly.
And I guess that's one of the concerns that I guess anybody has with it.
Right.
And one of the other things that when I was buying my houses, I bought 2 houses way back when, there was no consideration for having an inspection done. And yet, I see writing about people running to, well, we had this house inspected, and guess what they found? Or guess what they didn't find, which I guess is really the thing.
And then a lot of people now, to become competitive in getting their offers accepted, are waiving inspections, George. And so they're buying this house, on face value that you say that everything is in working order and it's fine and there's no major issues. I want this house, I want to be in this neighborhood, and I'm willing to waive that so that you would consider my offer more so than, say, maybe 10 other offers that haven't waived inspection.
So if you have a situation where you have an inspection done, what does that mean in terms of the offer? You make an offer for $1 gazillion, and the inspection comes back. What do you renegotiate from there?
Exactly. You can do that. You can. Like if the inspection report comes back and they find some glaring issues, then I contact the other side and say, look, this is what the inspection report came back at. Is this something that you're willing to repair? Do you want to renegotiate the price? Do you want to sell as is? And, you're not going to make any repairs. You're not willing to undertake that. And it's reflective in the price that the current buyer is going to be purchasing the property at. You know, there's lots of things you could do with it.
Yeah.
Some people can walk away if if you're still within contract and it hasn't come time to sign the purchase and sale agreement. You could have a buyer walk away and just say that I don't want to, I don't want to take this on. This is too much, or this is too expensive. It's too costly for me to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go on to the next property.
So essentially,
So inspections are important.
so essentially what you're saying is that the cost of repairing whatever the inspector found either gets reflected in the renegotiated price,
Right.
or you swallow the cost.
Exactly. And some people are willing to do that.
Yeah, or take the risk of
Exactly.
surprises.
Right.
My granddaughter bought a house up in New Hampshire, and a year or so later they were doing some renovations, and what's all this mold?
Ooh.
And
Oh, that's not good.
they got into a situation where the inspector didn't find it, and
Wow.
it was a really quirky situation where somebody put a nail in the wall and hit a pipe, and it sprung a leak. Not a big leak that showed up, but just enough to attract the mold. And they got into a situation where they went back to the inspector and said, "Hey guys, guess what you missed?" And
wow.
that was a situation. I guess is that common that if the inspector misses something, they incur the cost of repairs, or does that have to be something special in the inspection report?
I would think so. I haven't come across that issue, that the inspector missed something. That's a really difficult one. So I'm not quite sure, but if something was missed, or that's why you have like a thorough home inspection, so that that issue would have come up, and that you would have gone back to the seller to say, all right, I found this. Obviously, like, we need to remedy the situation before closing.
Yeah.
So that's why the home inspection is so valuable. But I'm not sure if you can go back to the home inspector to say that they missed something. I'm not quite sure how you would remedy that situation.
Okay, interesting. They did, in fact, go back, and they got the home inspectors had to bring in a crew and fix it.
Right.
And it was kind of extensive. But anyway, I know that the first house I bought was brand new. It was built in a brand new division. And went in, and one of the bedrooms, flipped the switch and blew the fuse. Whoops. Fortunately, my father's an electrician, and he.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah. That's the problem right there. So he fixed that thing. It was an easy fix, but I guess you get surprises with the house. And I guess the other question, is, besides just strict real estate, one of the concerns I guess I've seen mentioned is how do you get resolution between you and your neighbors? And have you ever run into situations with you bought a house but I thought the property line was here, but no, it's over here. And
Correct. So that is covered through title insurance that new homeowners purchase. And that covers that for the entire time you own the property. So the title insurance, you would contact them and say, listen, there's a dispute as to the property line, or if there's, let's say, a shed on the property there's a dispute as to who does it belong to.
Yeah.
The title company would resolve that, and they would send out a surveyor, land surveyor, and determine what the exact property lines are, if there was an issue, if it really was on your neighbor's property, and that way you would have a definitive answer as to where the lines are.
Well, suppose you find one of these things. How does that impact the sale of the property?
Well, so the title company would they would take care of that issue for you, but it's covered because you've bought it. It's like buying, apartment insurance if you needed it.
Yeah.
And so the issue would come up. It doesn't, depending on when you find out about the issue, you can either find out about it in the title exam, or if not, let's say, couple of years down the road, it comes up, well, you're covered by title insurance, so you would contact the title company and they would resolve the issue.
Yeah.
And they incur the cost. Like, it's at no cost to you.
Yeah, okay.
Because you've already paid for
That's
it.
what the insurance is for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To cover the cost of unraveling this mess
Right.
that you
Right.
discovered. Yeah. So you get into a lot of interesting situations, I guess, with
You do.
buying houses, and different areas have different rules and regulations. You run into situations with various communities, and there's zoning requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a weird one here in Beverly. Some couple had gotten a green rash, and all of a sudden they wanted to put in a solar collector. Well, that's nice. And they got one of these very elaborate ones that track the sun.
Okay.
And they set it up on their front lawn. And the natives got very upset about that. And long story short, they made him take it down eventually.
Wow.
But-
Okay.
I guess the question is, you buy a piece of property, and what limits you to what you can do on your property?
As long as you're using the property for its intended purpose, to reside in, it's a residential dwelling, as long as it's being used to continue to serve that purpose, then it's allowable. But, right, as long as it's not a nuisance to anybody else, to your neighbors, if it doesn't interfere with your neighbor's enjoyment of their property, then you're fine.
Well,
But I think in that particular instance that you were mentioning, maybe that device that was on the front lawn, it could affect the neighbors on either side. I'm not sure, but maybe that's on the basis of how they got him or her to remove that.
Well, that gets to be I guess the concern of. There's another case here in Beverly where a young girl had chickens and had a rooster,
Right.
and the rooster used to crow.
Right.
And the natives got very upset about the crowing rooster in the morning. And that's going round and round. So this whole issue of what is the intended use of the property,
Right.
how far can you stretch that to doing things that, well, you wouldn't normally think of, but at the same
Right.
time, somebody on the other side of the property line says,
Yeah.
that's totally unacceptable.
Right.
Do you ever get involved in some of those, or is that
I don't get involved in those, but I've known people. You could ask the town. You could ask for, a special permit, or go to the town and ask permission, and they would present it to the town at large and just say, Nancy wants to house some chickens on her property. Is
Yeah.
anyone in, does anybody object? Does anyone, and then, I would present what's involved in that.
Yeah.
Do I have, the proper equipment? What's the sound going to be like? Is it going to be disturbing to neighbors to have chickens on my property? So you can handle it that way.
Yeah. So I guess there gets to be a lot of issues after the fact that you thought you got this piece of property, and it's really not that piece of property, and that comes up later, or what you think is a intended use of the property doesn't necessarily agree with what the town building permits say.
Right.
And I think in this day and age of everybody going green with all sorts of different devices, it's stretching it to some extent as to what you can do. And I guess we can probably end up in a situation where somebody's going to complain that you can't put a third floor addition on your house because you're blocking the sunlight to my solar cells.
Right.
So
That definitely can happen.
yeah, and or I've seen articles where people have gotten very upset because somebody built a house on a piece of property and you're blocking my view.
Right.
So I guess how do you resolve what these variances are, and at the same time, somebody buys a piece of property, and why can't they do on their property what they want to do?
Correct. So that's one argument, right? That person that wants to build that additional story on that property.
Yeah.
And the other, your neighbors would say that I have a right to my view.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you do, but the town, when you go and ask for permission, they'll say, like, okay, are there other properties that have that additional story? Are there other properties that their view is obstructed? You purchase a property, but you don't have any rights to a view, so it becomes difficult because you're basically in court asking for permission to build this additional story.
Yeah.
So someone's going to be upset. Whether or not it gets approved or not, that depends. But there is that potential that you could have a neighbor that wants to add an additional story. And if they have, if they get the proper permitting, it could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other kinds of issues that come up is people are renting apartments. And there's all sorts of issues that show up relative to rent. Do you pay the rent on time? And at what point does the landlord get the right to say, hey, you ain't paying, you're out of here?
Right.
And I've known some of the guys I used to work with that owned rental property, and the process of evicting somebody can
It's
be
very difficult
very
and long.
complicated.
And
Yeah.
costly.
Yeah.
In Massachusetts is a state that typically favors renters. And so they don't want people being evicted. And they certainly don't want people with families and kids and elderly people being evicted. So it is a long and arduous process, definitely.
Do you get involved in that at all? Or
Our office does handle evictions, yes. We do.
And I guess the question comes down to how do you decide what is a valid reason to evict somebody
Right.
as opposed to, well, you got to make some accommodations because everybody, I guess, that's is withholding rent has got some complaint that the landlord didn't fix the washing machine or fix something.
Right.
So how does this stuff get resolved? Do you have to go to court to do it?
Well, you try and avoid going to court, but if for some reason both sides can't agree, then you do have to go to court
Yeah.
and let the courts decide how to proceed.
So
But they want the resolution to take place between the landlord and the tenant at all costs. If they can avoid you coming into court, court really is a last resort.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there something in between just talking it over with your landlord and going to court? Is there some sort of arbitration in between?
Yes, you can go to arbitration, absolutely. Try and avoid that, trying to avoid going to court because it's obviously costly, right? It's costing the landlord, time, could be time out of work, money. They have to hire an attorney to go in on their behalf. So if you can get someone that can mediate between the two of you, it's a lot better
Well,
to try and find a common ground.
Are there organizations that do this arbitration?
There are some public services that can offer that,
Well,
for sure.
Are they public services or are they for fee?
Right. Some of them do for a fee, but if you, for some reason, if the person can't afford it.
Well, that's usually the problem.
Right.
If you're renting out, in the state of Massachusetts, if you're renting, you can't afford to buy.
Right.
So you're in limited financial situation.
Exactly, right.
So,
So you're going to try and, mitigate or try and go to, whoever the court might suggest
Yeah.
to mediate between the two parties. So, there are things that you can do besides hiring attorneys. And usually the tenant doesn't have the means to hire an attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you can avoid having to go to court, then you try.
Well, that's what the usual process is. I
Right.
can't afford an attorney, but I can withhold rent to get
Exactly.
somebody's attention, and that's
Right. And that usually does get their attention.
Yeah, and I guess there's some well, okay, in a criminal case, you're guaranteed some sort of legal support.
Right.
Is there something equivalent to that in real estate?
And you mean in landlord-tenant situations, or?
Yeah, for a tenant situation, or
There are services that are available if for some reason the tenant can't afford, counsel. There are services that are provided through the court system that can help with that.
so how does one get involved with how does one of those find one of those?
You can go to your local courthouse and, you could ask them for pro bono services that they might have. They have a list of attorneys that are willing to offer X amount of hours to deal with issues for people that can't afford their hourly fees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, surprise, surprise, we've spent a half hour already.
Wow.
Yeah,
That went by so fast.
That was quick. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And
Thanks, George.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for sitting in with us. And as I mentioned most times, at the end of the credits is my email address. So if you got any questions or comments, please send me an email. Or if you want space here at the table, send me an email and we'll make room for you. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.